Story 1. Things that should have been red flags that I was too naive to recognize. 1. Left notes on my car windshield when I was at work, at a friend's house, or at the store. It seemed sweet at the time, but I later realized my significant other was keeping tabs on me, even when I had not said where I was. 2. Told me how much a hitman cost and said it was cheaper than you would expect. 3. Told me something, then later said it was a lie or a test, as if I should have figured that out instead of expecting the truth. 4. Expected me to answer every call and became angry if I wanted to end the call first. 5. Complained about all my friends and family, saying they were manipulative or rude. I did not recognize this as an attempt to isolate me until after we broke up. Story 2. He had shown very jealous tendencies and hit me on the head because he thought I was looking at a man, so things were already bad. We were outside his friend's house when his friend asked how I was doing, and he got mad at me for answering. I got in my car and drove away. Story 3. I kept having to call the police to calm my wife after she became addicted to a slew of prescription drugs. I told her doctors that opiates for a ruptured vertebra, stimulants for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, Ambien most nights to help her sleep, an assortment of medications for anxiety and depression, and additional medicines to combat side effects made her violent. One time I called the police during a bad episode and it made me cry. The officer said he had already been there and asked when it would stop. I thought I had been holding things together reasonably well. I had an office job where no one knew what was going on, though my work had suffered greatly. I kept clothes and food in my trunk in case I had to stay out for a while because she had decided I was part of the conspiracy. I used a gym on the way to work where I could shower or have some quiet time. I did all the housework and errands because she could not work or do much of anything most of the time. Each time she cut herself, she told the hospital it was an accident, and she always tried to go to a different one. We lived in a major metropolitan area with many hospitals nearby. The officers saw through it. Being seen like that, and knowing that even that lifestyle was running out, hurt. I am now recovering from the divorce and enjoying the calm. I still sometimes panic for no reason, and I feel more comfortable with clothes and food stashed in the trunk, but I feel much healthier. I get more sleep. My blood pressure has mostly normalized. I do not cry at work anymore. Story 4. I received a message that clearly was not meant for me. We had our first date, which went really well. The message called me cheap and a slimeball and said I was on my last chance to make things right on her coming birthday with lots of presents. I replied that I was ex, that we had just met and had one date, and asked if the message was for someone else. She replied pretending to be her 12-year-old sister. Then her father messaged me saying he had told off his younger daughter. I am out. Fuck that shit. Story 5. He did not want to have sex because he was grossed out by my period, which had ended 3 days earlier. I backed out immediately. Story 6. I would not really call it a relationship since it was only 3 dates. I met this girl at a wedding. She was a friend of a friend, and we exchanged numbers that night. We texted for a while and then had a date. The first date was probably a big red flag, but I shrugged it off. We connected on Facebook, and she noticed she had gone to college with a girl I had gone to high school with. No big deal until I found out she had been messaging that girl and asking her all sorts of questions about me in high school, who I dated, what car I drove, and so on. By the third date, I was not sure how long we would be together, so I normally would not have taken her to a very nice restaurant so early, but I was in the mood for steak and took her to a fairly high-end steakhouse. I have never been more embarrassed by someone's behavior in public. I have a 6- and 3-year-old at home now. She sent back 3 martinis because they were not made correctly, and she was extremely insulting and rude about it. She ordered her steak medium and then got angry because she insisted she had ordered medium rare. Both the waiter and I told her she had ordered medium. She made comments about what other women in the restaurant were wearing, not very subtly. Despite my trying to leave without buying her dessert, she asked for a dessert menu and expected them to make something they did not have. They had cheesecake and she wanted chocolate cheesecake. Another outburst at the staff. On the way out, she stopped and complained to someone loudly enough for other customers to hear. Once in my car, I was so embarrassed I pretended I had left my credit card on the table so I could go back in. I gave the waiter an extra $20 and apologized. telling him I was going to break up with her as soon as I dropped her off. He laughed and said he wished he could see it. I did not give her much of a chance to respond. She called me a loser and stormed off. I have not seen or heard from her since. Story 7. One day he casually told me he had a wife and 2 daughters and that he was unhappy. His wife never suspected anything. He stalked me for 2 months trying to change my mind. What a crazy man. Story 8. I told her I was going to leave, and she said, "So you were going to leave me just like you left your brother?" My twin brother committed suicide in 2017, and she knew how much guilt I had about not being there for him. That was a manipulative, disgusting thing for any person to say, especially someone who claims to love you. I moved out 2 days later. Story 9. He wanted me to grow out my armpit and leg hair and texted, called, and emailed me about it. It seemed like a pretty silly thing, and he just had a minor fetish, but after several days of this, my sister said, "Why do you always attract the controlling freaks?" I finally had a moment of clarity. Story 10. I had a very long and toxic relationship with an ex. I had wanted to leave for years, but he would threaten to kill himself and I would end up staying. I finally got the courage to walk away when I was diagnosed with several benign liver tumors. The doctor told me that with this type of tumor, it was vital to stop taking hormonal birth control immediately and permanently. I researched it on my own and confirmed that the single most important thing I could do to avoid further complications was to stop taking hormonal birth control for good. I told my then husband about the appointment and he said very calmly, "Well, that is going to be a problem." I asked what he meant. I said I would go to a gynecologist as soon as I could get an appointment and we could use condoms until then. Now, condoms were unacceptable because we were married. Not having sex until I got to the gynecologist was also unacceptable. What made my blood run cold was when he suggested that I should continue to take birth control as normal and not tell the doctor. "He will never know," he said. He went on to suggest I go on and off birth control so I would be off it before any follow-up appointments to ensure the doctor would never know. I was stunned and I said, "You understand this could kill me? This is not about placating a doctor. This is about my life." He shrugged and said he was not using condoms and that I needed to figure it out. I did figure it out. I left him more than a decade ago and have never been happier. Story 11. She chose me because I had the same first name, a similar appearance, and lived in the same area of the state as her ex-fiancé of 2 years, who had dumped her a month before we met. I felt more offended by that than by simply being rejected. Story 12. We were married for 6 years. At first I thought she only struggled with occasional depression and anxiety, but things escalated. I left when she began threatening to stab me in my sleep. We had tried couples and individual therapy, but she refused to consider medication. I called to meet and try to find some closure, but she cut me off, told me I was not allowed to leave her and, as punishment, that she was sleeping with 2 other men. At that point, I ignored her calls and filed for divorce. I hope she is doing well, but I am glad I no longer have to fear for my life. Story 13. My brother came to visit. After I had spent the whole day with my girlfriend, it was time to see him because we had not seen each other for a long time. We prepared some snacks and were about to start watching The Lord of the Rings because we both love it. She called and began a long phone conversation. I told her my brother was waiting for me, and she said I could not spend my time with anyone because it belonged to her. That was the last conversation between us. Story 14. When my now ex-wife came into the living room where I was sleeping on the couch after a fight and started lunging at me, she asked if she reminded me of my stepfather, who used to come into my room at night and stand over me before dragging me out of bed by my ankles. He would then beat me for whatever sins he said I had committed that day. She was the only person I had ever shared this with. She went out of town for work 2 days later, and when she came home I was gone and in another state. It was remarkable how much abuse I had put up with to that point. It dawned on me then that if he returned to my life I would not let him hurt me, so there was no reason to let her abuse me either. Thank you for the kind words and for supporting others who shared similar stories. Peace, happiness, and love to you all. Story 15. We had been together for 6 to 8 months and had lived together for at least 2 months when I decided to make tuna salad. I asked how he liked it and he told me. I brought back 2 bowls, half the can prepared his way and half the can prepared the way I liked it. He completely freaked out and said that if we could not agree on how to eat tuna, it could not work. I replied that we did not have to agree and that we could both have it exactly the way we wanted and be happy. He vehemently disagreed. I started thinking about his other controlling behaviors and his inability to compromise. We did not break up that day, but it was the day our relationship broke. The cheating did not help either. Story 16. It was already on the rocks around the time of the millionth drunken argument. The moment that sealed it was when she said to me that if my dad had wanted to be alive, he would still be here. My dad had died in a car accident 3 years earlier. I immediately went from loving her enough to try to make it work to thinking she was the most vile person on earth. Story 17. She kept waking me up all night, trying to argue with me. The argument was about me going to sleep. Story 18. He put a gun in my face and threatened to kill me. I left immediately, even though we had been married for years and had children. I was not going to be there if he ever pulled the trigger. Story 19. We went to the mall and stopped at a kiosk selling cookies. I planned to buy 1 cookie, but the woman working there said if I bought 2 I would get a third free, so I bought 2. My date angrily told her she was trying to scam me and started yelling so loudly it echoed through the mall. It was so embarrassing. I am not interested in someone who is rude to customer service staff. Story 20. She told everyone she knew about every little disagreement. Whenever I could be perceived as unreasonable, it became everyone's business. But the surprises, special dates, and times she lent her cousin rent money were never mentioned. Only the negative things became public knowledge. Story 21. She taped photos of her ultrasounds, images of the child she had lost custody of, around my apartment with masking tape during her first visit. Story 22. When she came home drunk one night, she asked me if my brother had told me. I asked, "Told me what?" She said, "That I cheated on you with him." My brother had cheated on his girlfriend with my girlfriend. To make things even worse, this all happened a month before she came home drunk and told me, in autumn 2019. I did not sleep with his ex-girlfriend, and I did not punch him or anyone. The only thing I punched was my ex's concrete wall. Story 23. I was going through some issues in my early 20s and was desperate for any kind of affection, which is the only reason I took a couple of weeks to end the relationship. The second time I met her, she told me to delete every woman's number from my phone, including my sister. She then came to my place, saw my full bookshelf, ridiculed me for being a reader, and in the same breath announced that she loved cocaine and wanted me to try it. I finally escaped, but by then she had already been sleeping with 2 of my friends, who are no longer my friends. The good news is I have been happily married for 5 years and consider myself incredibly lucky. Story 24. He followed me to a night out, got down on one knee, and stopped traffic in the middle of a city center street to declare his love. We had been on 2 dates. That same night, he told me he could see the future and already knew he would die defending my honor while I was carrying our twins. He was fun. Story 25. He canceled my meal order while I was in the bathroom because he thought I had ordered too much. It was just a small extra dumpling. Story 26. She came to stay for the first time the night before New Year's Eve. We had planned to go out drinking the next night. I had just worked a 12-hour shift as a carpet fitter, so I was exhausted. She had a few drinks and became aggressive because I wanted to relax while she wanted to go out. We broke up 3 days later. My father was an aggressive drunk when I was a child, so I could see how it would go. If you know you are an aggressive drunk, stop drinking. Story 27. He introduced me to his Beanie Baby collection on the 3rd date. I wasn't bothered until I started to leave and he asked me to hug and kiss them, tuck them in, and name each one. There were at least 30. Story 28. He did not have a car, so I helped him with rides to work. He worked the 3rd shift at Toys R Us, stocking shelves. I picked him up one night. He was so drunk he could barely stand. I made a comment that he was not going to be able to work. He started throwing his belongings at me in the parking lot. I threw his things on the ground and left him there because I had dealt with one too many alcoholics and was not going to waste any more of my time. 5 years later, he is sober and getting married this year. Good for him. Story 29. I was dating a woman who had been previously married. She and her ex had a 2-year-old child together. One night she told me about a plan to coach her daughter to claim that the child's father had molested her because she wanted full custody and did not want him around anymore. I decided then to end the relationship. Edit to bring closure. I called and told the child's father about her plan. As far as I know, she never went through with it, but she did attempt to have drugs planted on him. I'm not sure how that turned out. I had been dating her for a year, but after that conversation I ended all contact. Story 30. She accused me of ignoring her while I was at a funeral. Story 31. She told me she was on birth control. It turned out she thought that drinking a lot of Mountain Dew would prevent pregnancy. Story 32. She showed up at my place one night because she could not sleep alone. I was fine with that until she explained why. When she was alone, demons in the corners and along the edges of the room would fill the dark spots and watch her with glowing eyes. I urged her repeatedly to seek help and to see a doctor, but she would not. I felt terrible leaving her, but I was not equipped to help someone who needed professional care and refused it. Story 33. When I wasn't allowed to hang out with my male friends in broad daylight, but he thought it was okay to hang out with girls he didn't know in the middle of the night, it was a major red flag. Story 34. I'm a black person. My best friend in the world is a white person. We were roommates at one point. He brought a date over. I met her and nothing seemed strange. As it turned out, she had a problem with my friend living with me because I am black. He immediately broke it off with her. I do not have many friends, but I like to think I have quality over quantity. Edit. It is sincerely heartwarming to see so many enjoy an anecdote of friendship triumphing over bigotry. This post may be the leverage I need to convince my best friend forever to join Reddit. Thank you, everyone. Story 35. 2 weeks after my mother died. He asked, "Is that still bothering you?" Story 36. I came home and found him with a teenager. He was 33. Story 37. I dated a woman who was very jealous. I could not hang out with my friends without her constantly calling me. I was not allowed the same freedom because that would have implied I did not trust her. That was bad enough, but it was only the tip of the iceberg. After 9 months, a mutual friend who was also close to her told me she had been hiding her sexuality. She was bisexual. At first, I did not understand why she had kept it from me, because I have no problem with that. The mutual friend also said she had been having sex with other women, hiding her bisexuality so she could sleep with whoever she wanted without me suspecting. Sometimes she even had threesomes with the women and their boyfriends. When I confronted her, she said she did not want me to know because those other people did not matter to her and she did not love them. Needless to say, I left immediately. Story 38. She told me that if she hooked up with a girl, it wouldn't be cheating because she had always wanted to do it. I already learned this lesson. If someone tells you they are going to do something, you should believe them. Story 39. We had been dating for 5 days when my job required me to move somewhere, so I suggested we try a long-distance relationship for a while. She did not like the idea and said she would drop her Doctor of Philosophy program to move with me. Story 40. This entire thread makes me feel like such a mentally stable adult. Story 41. He was violent when angry, extremely violent. What finally did me in was when he sped up on a dark county road and turned off the headlights. We survived, and as soon as we reached town, I got out of the car and ended the relationship. Story 42. A bit late, but he had left his phone at my house. While it was in my possession, I received a text thanking him for the sex. When I confronted him about it, he tried to hit me. I could not call emergency services fast enough. He left before the police arrived. A few days later, he arrived at my house unannounced, and I walked out with a baseball bat. I never saw him again. Story 43. We weren't in a relationship, but I had a developing thing with a guy once. One day, when I wasn't around, he and some other friends went to a bar where he sneakily slipped stronger alcohol into another girl's drink. That girl was talking a lot with one of our other friends and not paying much attention to him, so he got jealous, threw that friend onto the floor, and began to strangle him. He was thrown out of the bar after that and later tried to play it off as just a joke. How do you jokingly try to strangle someone? I cut him out of my life as soon as I found out. I definitely wouldn't want to be with someone like that. Story 44. I returned home from temporary duty a day early to surprise her and found the neighbor in bed with her. We had been married for 6 weeks at that point. Story 45. I realized she did not brush her teeth. They were green. I am out. Story 46. After our first date, she sent me a Google Maps pin of my address with just haha as the only context. I hadn't told her my address. Then she followed that by asking how my boss was doing using his first name. I hadn't mentioned anyone from my work. I know women are more at risk than men, and searching someone is common. That information is easy to find. I was not upset that she did it. What put me off was the way she told me, without warning or context. She started dropping my address and my boss's name like a villain in a bad movie, hinting she knew the protagonist's secret identity. That level of stalking made me pull the eject handle immediately. Story 47. I had a huge crush on her for a while, but never had the opportunity to talk to her because of our awkward work schedules. Then a friend from work set us up. I was elated. The first date went really well and we hit it off. We started spending as much time as we could around each other, talking on the phone every night, all the special things you do when you are starting a new relationship. Then she started coming over more often unannounced. She would stay for a couple of nights, then a week, then 2 weeks. I would come home from work and she would be in my house, sometimes drunk. She had almost been fired for an incident involving alcohol before and was lying to her employer about her sobriety. She would have a few too many drinks, then go off about her family or about how I was not taking our 2-month relationship serious enough. The final straw came on Valentine's Day this year. She got so drunk she could not walk on her own. After I refused her drunk advances, she flipped out. What followed was a couple of hours of her threatening to drive home drunk, sitting outside so the cold weather would freeze her to death, lying in my bed and wailing my name until hoarse, and alternating between manic laughter and crying. 2 days later, once she sobered up, I told her to get out. We dated for just around 3 months. The quickest turnaround I have had in a relationship. As awesome and horrifying as it would have been to have a horse in my bed, she did not transform. Her voice became hoarse. Story 48. You don't understand how jealous I can get, she said tearfully, upset that her friend and I attended the same university, the 3rd largest in the country, no less. Story 49. She threw her phone at the wall and stormed out the first time I said no to sex. I was not in the mood. At least it was her own phone, but Jesus. Story 50. I found a video on my husband's tablet from a hidden camera in our bathroom. It showed my 14-year-old niece naked. We had just celebrated our 7th anniversary and have a 6-year-old of our own. I kissed him and sent him off to work that morning, thinking I had a wonderful husband. Before he left work, I called the police, and a restraining order was issued quickly. I arranged for him to move in with his parents before he returned. He never came home again. It was like our marriage evaporated. It has been hard to process, but I would not change how I handled anything. Since then, he pleaded guilty to 8 counts related to the production and possession of child pornography. He was sentenced to 40 years with 34 suspended. He will be required to register as a sex offender for life. He will be under indefinite supervision when he is released. He cannot have unsupervised contact with any children, including his own. This has been traumatic, and now I have to handle the divorce. I put it aside during the criminal case. We have been legally separated since that day. I have no regrets. My niece got justice and can begin to heal. My child and other children are safe from him, and he did not have a chance to escalate. Story 51. I was dating a really cool guy and everything was going great. About a month in, he started speaking to me in baby talk, and it did not stop. Story 52. He wanted me to spend time only with him or my family. He checked my phone and wanted me to have only 5 chats. My mother, my father, my sibling, and him. I could not talk, say hi, or hug my male friends, and eventually I was not allowed to have them. I was not allowed to meet my female friends either. At one point, he took my phone and unfollowed every male on my Instagram. He used to come to my place and stay there with me to keep me from going out. I dreamed about traveling to Japan, but he said no because I liked a Japanese actor, and he was afraid I might meet him and fall for him. He was extremely toxic. I finally found the courage to break up after 2 years together. He stalked me for a couple of weeks afterward. Now I value myself much more and would never let someone do this to me again. Update: wow, an award. That means a lot to me. Thank you all for your support and understanding. Please take care of yourselves and remember you deserve better. Story 53. He was working and had enough money to move out, but he told me he would stay with his mother forever because she cooks and does the chores for him. Story 54. What kind of 22-year-old spends their only day off playing video games? A chef who works 3 jobs and finally coordinated a day off between them. Story 55. After our second date, we were hanging out with mutual friends. I was teasing another man about something very trivial. The man I had been seeing walked up to me, grabbed my wrists, and started screaming in my face, demanding that I apologize for disrespecting his friend. I left. He called me later, crying and apologizing. Now, story 56. She completely stopped showering because punks do not shower and then applied massive amounts of patchouli to herself, to the point that I have almost developed a fear of that scent. Story 57. He went to England and came home with jewelry. After our second date, he said he had also bought engagement rings but had thrown those into the ocean. When I said I couldn't accept the gifts, he had a breakdown on the couch and cried hysterically. I walked out of the apartment, made sure he didn't follow me, and ran to the bus. He had been acting strangely a few times before. A few months later, I found out he had been grooming young girls online for a while and was prosecuted. This happened 20 years ago in Sweden. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison for 56 counts of rape. Story 58. He was unemployed and trying to move in with me as soon as possible while also talking about wanting a joint bank account. Story 59. Not that you are not pretty, but you would be much more attractive if you looked like my baby sister. I replied, you mean 15 years younger and a minor, 6 feet tall, blonde, and a size 2? He said it in front of his friends, and everything went silent. His best friend punched his arm and told him he was being a dick. I got up and walked out. His sister called later to apologize for his behavior and said his entire family was angry with him. The worst part was that he genuinely did not think he had done anything wrong. Story 60. Although he knew the whole time, I did not find out that he was HIV positive until I was diagnosed. Story 61. When she wrote her friend's partner, I was still amazed that she acted surprised that I hadn't forgiven her. Story 62. Her father recently got into a brawl with the teenage child of someone he was dating. I was concerned and asked questions. She explained that the teen had it coming because they did not know their place. Confused, I asked her to elaborate. It turned out that a grown man had punched an autistic teenager instead of walking away. I told her I refuse to date people who are okay with domestic violence. She was immediately remorseful, but a few moments later she defended her father's drunken, violent outburst against a child. Do not date people who think an adult ought to beat children with disabilities. Story 63. Sorry, I can't assist with text that sexualizes or describes sexual activity involving minors. I can help rewrite the sentence without references to children. Examples. She said she wanted to see me on the first date and meet in a public park. She said she wanted to be intimate with me on the first date and meet in a public park. She said she wanted to spend the first date together in a public park. Story 64. It never became a relationship, but it got very close. I met a man through a local theater and thought he was cool, but he started following me everywhere at practices and shows. The last straw was when I did not get notified that a practice had been canceled and he was waiting there, saying, I just felt like someone would show up. It raised my alarm bells. The worst part is when I tried to get help from the director or other actors, they would ignore me or tell me he was just trying to be nice and could not help it. I blocked and deleted his number, and I am sad to say I have not returned to community theater because he is still involved in most productions in town. Story 65. I was in denial about how I was being treated and convinced myself she was going through a rough time. While helping her move into a new place, her dad, whom I had just met that weekend, said, "Megan, if you don't stop being a bitch, you are going to lose your boyfriend." I realized then, in my most John Mulaney-style internal monologue, that she was being a bitch. We broke up after her parents left. I met my now wife a few months later and have not stopped smiling since. Story 66. My husband of 5 years choked his sister and lifted her off the ground by her throat a couple of nights ago. I am not sticking around to see it happen to me. Additional information. He was drunk, and she slapped him because he was being verbally abusive to me and getting in my face. He turned around and tried carrying her up our stairs by her throat. After that happened, I was crying, grabbed my purse, and started walking for about 20 minutes before I called the military police. He stayed the night elsewhere and now wants to go to therapy with me. I have been trying to get him to go with me for months, and now that this has gone public and he could lose his promotion, he has finally agreed to go with me. I told him I want a divorce yesterday, and I am working on things I have to do today for that to happen. Second edit. Thank you all for the kind words. I am trying to read through all the comments and reply when I can. For those saying it is fake, my video evidence suggests otherwise. I am running around today doing what I can to get out, and I have a wonderful group of friends and family ready to help. Thank you for the awards. They are my first. As far as my sister-in-law goes, she is 18 but still lives with her parents for now. She is trying to get out as well, but her mother bullied her out of giving a statement to the police and pressing charges. Her mother cares more about my husband's career than her daughter's well-being. He was the biggest no of my life. Update. He has frozen my cards and now I have $100 to my name. I do not think I could hire an attorney even if I wanted to. Story 67. I was repeatedly punched in the face on our 2-year anniversary because I had not proposed. We were 18 years old. This happened on my lunch break after I had given her jewelry and a weekend vacation. I went back to work, came home, and was arrested for domestic violence. Story 68. My mom invited my sister and me on a cruise vacation. When I told the man I had been seeing for only about a week, he blew up, saying I hadn't asked his permission and that no one goes on cruises with family. It must be another man. Bye, dude. Story 69. My date showed up at my door even though I had not disclosed my address. Update. This post received a lot of attention. Thank you for the awards. I cannot reply to all comments, but I am enjoying reading them. For clarification, I am a man and we had only just started dating. I am very wary of giving out my address until I know who I am dealing with. I do not want to end up with a stalker if things go sour. That happened in this case. Story 70. My last relationship ended 2 weeks ago. She is extremely religious and told me to my face that my father had shot himself because it was God's plan. My father died in 2019. Thank you all so much. I am doing better now. I unfortunately drained my savings moving in with this woman and have moved into my brother's basement. But I am getting back on my feet and hope to have my own place soon. If you are an eligible woman who loves cheese and are okay dating someone who enjoys drinking milk, contact me. Here is my dog. I got her the day after my father died for emotional support. She has been through it all with me, and I love her more than anything in the world. Story 71. She got mad when I wouldn't come see her during a hurricane. By Felicia, real quick. Story 72. We were at a bar with friends when a friend of my boyfriend came up and congratulated him on becoming a father soon. At first I laughed because I was not pregnant. Then I saw the panic in his eyes. I sold the house and both cars and moved to Scotland. Story 73. He was cheating on me halfway through the year we had been together. Story 74. He told me he loved me, but he spoke poorly of me to his friends. Story 75. He tried to slip off the condom during sex in an attempt to get me pregnant, which was against my clearly communicated wishes the first time we had sex. Story 76. I was on my phone in bed. She suddenly stood up, walked away, got in her car and went home. I had never been so confused, so I called her. She said that was the reason. Story 77. When he told me that women should not drink beer, it's not ladylike. Story 78. After about 2 years of him constantly trying to make me jealous, we temporarily had a 16-hour time difference because I was traveling home to see my grandparents. When I was asleep for about 7 hours because it was nighttime and I had not responded to his 50 texts, he said he was going to spend time with other girls for 7 hours that day because he thought I was probably going around spreading my legs. I do not know why, but in that moment I had a moment of clarity, and I simply replied okay. I blocked him, his family, and all his friends and moved on. If you cannot comprehend the 16-hour time difference, look up the time difference between Los Angeles and Japan. It is not that complicated. Story 79. I was interested in a woman I used to work with many years ago, and the feeling was mutual. We went bowling a couple of times and began talking about dating. She said that if we dated, she expected to be taken out at least twice a week, given gifts at least once a week, and that we would not have sex for at least 3 months. Given our similar work schedules, I had no idea how I was going to manage any of that. Story 80. I asked a girl out. We went to a hangout with some of her friends. She and another man started a serious conversation and stepped outside to continue. I subtly asked around and people said it was a whole drama thing. Later I drove her home and learned more. He was an ex who had stalked her for years since their breakup. He was sure they would get back together, and she had a restraining order against him. Okay, I could deal with that. On the next date, she and this man were standing in front of her apartment and he was holding her new puppy. She got in my car and told him to put the puppy back. How would he do that? It turned out he had a key to the apartment, the man with the restraining order. After that very short dinner, I took her home and stopped contacting her. Story 81. Dad had his police buddies run a background check on me when I came to pick her up. The date ended up being a watch a movie at her house kind of thing, with us sitting on opposite ends of the sofa beneath the gun rack. Story 82. My most recent ex would always ask random, vague questions like, "What would you do if someone came running toward us right now?" I would answer something like, "Move out of their way so they can keep running," and she would say, "Wrong answer," and get mad because she meant the person would attack us and expected me to say I would jump in front of her to defend her. She did this with many different vague questions and complained whenever I did not answer the way she wanted. I got out of there as quickly as I could. Edit. Thanks for the award. I've never had a post blow up this much. It's a shame it's on my throwaway. Story 83. The moment healing crystals were suggested as a cure for a family member with autism. Story 84. On our first date, she was an absolute cunt to the waiter over a tiny mistake with her meal. She received potatoes instead of fries and complained about it all night. Took 2 minutes to replace it, for fuck's sake. Story 85. It was not a romantic relationship, but she made me hold the bus driver every morning before school, so she could get there on time because she was late to our bus stop. I asked why she was always late, laughing out loud, and she told me it was none of my business. Then she made a post complaining about an unnamed person on the private story she had added me to. Story 86. He was a heavy cocaine user. It is one thing to do it while partying. I do not, but I could see the appeal. He was like that when we first started dating, and I was okay with it even though he could be rude while using. After we moved in together, he became a constant user, and it turned him into a very difficult person. Even worse, he was spoiled. His parents paid for everything, so he had no reason to stay sober except when he was at school. Within a month of living together, I completely ghosted him because I could not take it and did not want to deal with the aftermath. Story 87. We had dinner plans. She did not show and did not answer her phone all evening. She returned around midnight in her car, intoxicated and under the influence of drugs. I tried to take her keys, but she ran out of the house. I followed. She drove her car toward me. I called her brother to come and pick her up. The next morning, I returned her car and her belongings to her place. Bye. Note: I understand that in your area the term gear does not mean cocaine. Story 88. They wanted another partner. That was fine with me, provided the same rules applied to both of us. But they expected me to, first, not try anything with that partner, which I could understand, and second, not have another partner myself. So they could, but I could not? No. I told them to be happy with their other partner and left. I did not want either of those options. I only wanted confirmation that the same rules applied to both. Story 89. Second date. Context. We had known each other since we were kids and flirted over the years as casual acquaintances. In our 20s, we decided to try dating. Him. Do you want to get married someday? Me, maybe. I do not know. I am not even sure if marriage is right for me. I kind of just want to travel and build a career. That is all I am thinking about right now. Him, what about in 5 years? Me, I do not know. Maybe. If it is the right man, maybe. Him. I have loved you ever since we were kids. Me, thanks. Him. If we are together 5 years from now, would you marry me? Me, I am not really sure. At that point, I was desperate to run away. Him. I would hit a woman if she did not marry me after 5 years. I would beat her. Goodbye to the friendship too. Story 90. I went through a lot with my ex of 4 years. I should have left him long before this. The final nail in the coffin was him crashing his car while intoxicated on Xanax, alcohol, cocaine, and cannabis. If I had been in the car with him, I would have been killed 1,000%. I told him that night he could not drive and I begged him to stay at my place. He became so angry that he screamed at me, called me controlling, and drove off. I found out that he had crashed because he did not call me to say he got home safe, and I had a gut feeling. After endless calls and no answer, I used Find My iPhone and saw that it showed he was in the middle of a field near his house. I asked his mother to go and see if he was okay. When she went there, he was upside down in his car in the middle of a field and was incoherent. I had to spend 2 hours taking different buses to get to the hospital he was in, only for him to tell me he hates me and call me a crazy bitch for using Find My iPhone, completely ignoring the fact that maybe no one would have found him until morning if I had not. He also had his dealer bring him more Xanax and cannabis while he was in the hospital for a week after the crash. This, along with his new drug addiction, is what finally got me out of my abusive relationship. Every cloud has a silver lining, I guess. Story 91. Well, she married someone else out of nowhere. That was a cool way to find out I was the other man. Story 92. He screamed at me and got in my face when I refused to give him oral sex because he said I owed it to him after having to listen to me cry about my dad's cancer while we sat in his car in the school parking lot. We had only been dating about 2 weeks and had known each other less than a year. I figured that if he would yell at me over something like this in a public area, I hated to imagine what he would do when he really got mad in private. I got out of his car while he was still yelling, walked to my car, and drove home. I broke up with him over text. Story 93. She got drunk one night and told her brother that I was abusive. I wasn't. He was a veteran with post-traumatic stress disorder and a short fuse. She thought it was absolutely hilarious. Story 94. I realized he was trying to cut me off from my support network. It started out innocuous enough. He did not like my 2 closest friends and would ask, "Do we have to hang out with them? Can't we see some of your other friends?" I figured whatever. He does not have to like everyone. Then I noticed he liked anyone I was not really close to. He acted rude and crass around my closest friends but was nice and charming with others. One night I told him I was going to hang out with my best friend alone and he went off, saying she was a dog, she was trash, and I should not waste my time. I called him an asshole and he threatened to break up with me if I did not end my friendship with her. I said that sounded like a good idea. He went to my mom's house that night and spun a sob story to make her think I was cold-hearted and had broken up with him for no reason, trying to convince me to get back with him. I told him I did not need someone to control my life and I certainly did not need him. Thank you so much for all the support. To those with similar stories, I am so sorry you went through that and I hope you have the support you deserve. Story 95. We were not even in a relationship yet. We were only on the way there, which made it worse for me. When I did not have time for a couple of days because of work or other plans I had already made, she immediately became passive-aggressive about it. Story 96. My husband told me about 2 months ago that he is my superior. Story 97. I didn't walk away because I was an idiot. Here is a list of red flags that I ignored for far too long. 1. She had a sugar daddy and lied about it. 2. If I refused to take her to a fancy restaurant, she would threaten to call that man and say he would take her. 3. Physical violence that left bruises, cuts, and separated ribs. 4. Emotional abuse of all kinds. 5. Planning a vacation with 5 of her male friends, 4 of whom I found out the day before were Eskimo brothers. She acted like I was childish to be bothered by it. 6. Breaking dishes and furniture when she got upset. 7. Shoplifting and not telling me until she was getting into the car. A myriad of other things that would scare any normal person away, including moving clothes and toiletries into my apartment days after we started seeing each other. I am currently out of the relationship, but she still texts, calls, and shows up at my apartment randomly when she gets drunk. To be honest, I need to move out of this city. Story 98. She admitted that she and her best friend had been bullies in high school and enjoyed it, bragging about torturing another girl. That planted the seed for the breakup, and about a month later it was over. Story 99. Not romantic, but this person is a residential assistant at my university, a student who works with security to help with issues on campus, and had been my friend since first year. When I first met him, I got bad vibes. I would be mid-sentence talking about something I liked, and he would pat my bed and ask me to sit with him. My flatmate told me to give him a chance, so I did. In second year, we went for a walk, and he spent the whole time insulting my outfit. It was a little different from what I normally wore, but I had bought a new hat and was excited to wear it. He told me the hat did not suit me and would suit him more. He took it off my head and wore it instead, and he trashed my outfit. We reached a forest area, and he said something like, "If somebody assaulted you, you would be completely defenseless." I said that my chunky shoes would protect me because I could kick with them, and he swept my legs out from underneath me to prove I could not defend myself. He said, "Your shoes did not help you there, did they?" Later, when I was back home with my parents, he called me around midnight. He fished for compliments, then he said, "If you could have sex with me, you would." I had told this person about my sexual trauma, so this hit me hard. I spoke to my mental health advisor at university and was told that that was sexual harassment and physical assault and I should report him, but he is a residential assistant, the person I should be reporting these things to. I just avoid him now. Edit. I have a meeting with my mental health advisor who works with the university to talk about it more. It was good to hear from other residential assistants as well. There is unfortunately only one other residential assistant currently, a good friend of mine who defended his behavior in my first year, so I am not comfortable talking to him. We have limited staff on my campus because it is the rural campus for my university, but we do have security, so I think I am going to speak to someone higher up soon. Thank you to everybody. The comments have been a real kick up the butt. Edit 2. I told a couple of people I was going to get some pepper spray or something similar just in case something like this happens again, but after researching it, those are illegal to carry in the United Kingdom. Update. I just spoke to someone on the accommodation team and they are going to pass it on to the wardens for me. Thank you everyone for your advice and support. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.